All right, I'm going to get us started with the sponsors, okay? And then we'll move right into the Gemara. Year of Learning by Dr. Paul Koningsberg in memory of his brother, Dr. Sam Koningsberg, Shimon Reuven ben Labush, and Ed Goldberg's cousin, Nissen Hara Nissen ben Fardosa. Paul and Bob Bromberg in memory of their dear friend Julian Smith, Yehuda ben Yisrael. Malcolm Mann in memory of her family murdered in the Holocaust. Arav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesach bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Hold on a second. Yeah. Hello? Okay, I will. Bye. Okay, right. Many friends of Dr. Marvin Blush, Moshe Shalom ben Yitzchak Halevi, friends of Toby Peres, Saratova bat Yisrael Dov, friends of Malka Levi, Malka bat Yosef, friends of Avi Gitler, Avram Meir ben Shimon, shall assure her children and grandchildren in memory of her uncle, founding member of BRS, Dr. Israel Brook, Yisrael ben Arav Akiva, Marcia Federbush and family in memory of her husband, Dr. Uriel Paul Federbush, Uriel ben Harav Shimon. Month of Learning by Haran and Mel Haller in memory of her mother, Malka Rachel bas Yehuda Leib. Week of Learning by Gedalia and Phyllis Reese in memory of his father, Harav Chaim ben Shraga Feivel. Also Oscar and Shelley Moll in memory of his father, Shlomo ben Yitzchak, and mother, Rachel bas Naftali. Today also a day of learning by Yvette and Stuart Beck in memory of her mother, Malka Rachel bas Yehuda Leib, and by Fred and Susan Koss in memory of his father, David ben Yaakov. May the Shemas have an Aliyah, Krank Rafia, Velti Yeshua Shemet Leah, Rachel b'nei Israel, good big Gaben Shtia.
Amen.
Okay. Okay. So we are on, I'm picking up from the very bottom of Mem Hey, Amud Beis, right? Mem Vav is our daf for today. Correct? Yeah. Right. Okay. So at the very bottom line, right? We see there, Amar le Abaye, ha v'chein le'inyan tuma katani. So in other words, Abaye is still arguing, okay, on this inyan of whether one is strict about it or not, personally stringent, let's say, about, and will that then be an interposition or not? Okay, and then ha, okay, Ela Amar Abaye Hachi Kamar. Says Abaye, this is what he means to say. Okay, Mem Vav Amud Aleph. We sort of did go part of this. Le'inyan Siruf Tuma B'Pesach. What they're talking about is the idea of a mixture, joining, right, regarding something that's Tameh on Pesach. Ubashar Yemot Hashana, the other days of the year, Ika Plugta, there is a disagreement. Hey Chidami, how is that possible? Kagon to Ika Pachot Mikabetza Ochli. The example of there being less than an egg volume of foodstuffs. V'nag'o, okay, and that's what's tameh, okay? V'nag'o b'hai batseik b'pesach, okay? And it comes in contact with this dough on Pesach. So the Pesach, the dough is chometz, that's your asur, and the other items, okay, the other food is your heter, right? So what happens here? The Isur Chashuv Mitzaref, because since the chametz on Pesach is forbidden, it is considered then a significant mixture, and therefore they join, okay? And therefore it's forbidden. Ubashar Yemot Hashana, and the other days of the year, the Bekapida, that depends on whether the person is particular about it, talia milta. That's where it's dependent on it. Okay. Im makpid alav, if the person is stringent, kind of uptight about it, all right, mitztaref, then it's going to be joined. Im rotzeh b'kiyumo, but if he sees that dough, okay, as not stringent about it, but really helping to fill in the cracks of the bowl, we said, harei ha'areva, then it's nothing more than similar to the bowl itself. That's where we stopped yesterday. Now, matkif, this was Chela, Rava challenged him. Mi katani mitztarev, is it talking about joining? Vaha chotzeitz katani, but our Mishnah talked about whether that dough would be an interposition in the crack for tuma. Nothing about joining. Ela amar Rava, but Rava says, v'chein laha'alot tahara la'areva. And similar, if one wants to try to raise the status of the bowl itself from being tameh to tahor. Hechidami, how is that possible? Kagon de'itmei hach areva, as in a situation where this bowl became tameh. Uba'e le'itbule b'pesach de'isuro chashuv, and one wanted to try to be tovel, immerse the bowl in the mikvah during Pesach, when the chametz is a very clear, stringent, important prohibition. Chotzeitz, then it serves that chametz, that dough attached to the bowl, okay, is a break, is an interposition. Velo salka la tvila, and then you're not yotze on the immersion. B'shar yamot hashana, the other days of the year, b'kapida talia milta, then it depends on the stringency, I'll say, okay, the diligence, whatever, of the person. Imakpid alav, if the person is strict about it, chotzeitz, then it's an interposition. V'im rotzeh b'kiyumo, but if the person wants it to remain part of the bowl, harehu ka'areva, then it is like the bowl, like the trough. Now, another challenge in a second. Okay. Matkif la Rav Papa. Rav Papa challenges it. Mi katani v'chein le'inyan tahara. Does our Mishnah teach that it's the same as applicable vis-a-vis the purification? Ha le'inyan tuma katani. No, it's really teaching about the issue of tuma. Ela amar Rav Papa. So rather, Rav Papa suggests his explanation. V'chein le'inyan lehorid tuma la'areva. And similarly, if we're talking about removal of impurity from the bowl or the trough, hechidami, what's our example? How is that possible? Kigon denaga sheretz bahai batsek b'pesach de'isuro chashuv. For example, in the case where a sheretz, one of the 7 creepy crawly animals there, okay, had contact with that dough during Pesach, and where therefore the dough's status is a significant prohibition. Chotzeitz, then that serves as a interposition. Velo nachta la tuma. Okay, and he says, and therefore, okay, what do? That does not allow the tuma to be eradicated from the bowl. B'shar Yamot Hashana, the other days of the year, the B'kapei Datalia, that where then it's, so to speak, only dependent on how stringent the person is. Im makpid alav, if the person is stringent, chotzeitz, then it's an interposition. Im rotzeh b'kiyumo, if they want that dough to be considered filling in the cracks and part of the bowl, right? Harehu ke'areva, then it is not. Then it is similar to the bowl. Okay, that ends that particular sugya. New Mishnah. Okay, still dealing with dough. Okay, different kind of dough. Matnitin. Our Mishnah says batsek. All right, or batsek, hacheresh or hacheresh. Two different readings. Basically, it's the same concept, which is that this is called deaf dough. Why is it deaf? We won't go into that, except to explain that what it means is that it's a question of whether the dough has shown itself or made any sound of itself as part of the leavening process. It's not, you don't know whether that dough is leavened or not. Okay? So the Mishnah is telling us, Im yesh kiyotzei bo, all right, shehechmitz, if you have another pile, I'll say, of dough where you had mixed it with water, and that second pile seems to have begun to leaven, then apparently, then you can assume that since you added the water at the same time to the dough in the bowl or the dough on the rolling by the board, and the other dough and dough, secondary dough is leavening, the same thing you can assume, apparently, says the Mishnah, for this dough. However, the Gemara now comes, right? And therefore it's forbidden. Right? Im ein sham kiyotzei bo ma'u. What happens if you don't have other dough next, on the other side of the table, say? Amar Rabbi Abahu, Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, in the name of Reish Lakish. Kadei sheyelech adam mi migdal nunya l'Tiveria. Okay, you have to figure how much time does it take for one to have walked from the community of Migdal Nunya to the town of Tiveria. How long is it? In other words, what's the difference? What's the distance? A meal. Okay? So the Gemara says, V'nema meal. So let him say it's got to be the time, the amount of time to walk, let's say 18 minutes. Okay? So if you added the water, okay, and 18 minutes have passed, instead he's saying make that suggestion. That's the point that says assume that it's chametz. Kamash malan, it comes to teach us the shiure, the meal, migdal nunya ve'ad Tiveria. So why did he phrase it that way? He comes to also tell us, besides the time frame, he's also telling us what's the distance between that community and Tiverias. Now, Amar Rabbi Abahu, Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. He said as follows. Again, legabal, for the person who needs the dough. Litfilah, for when we're davening. Ulinatilat yadayim, where we're washing hands for a meal. Arba'a milin. There, we have to use a different time measurement, the amount of time to walk 4 miles. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Okay, Ivo Amra. So he says, no, another sage, Ivo, says the following. Va'arba'a amar ba. Okay, and when it says about these 4, there are really 4 items. Okay, v'chada minahu avud, and one of them, in terms of time frame, is the idea of for the tanner to allow how much time his hides are in the liquid. Ditnan, as taught in the Mishnah, v'chulan she'ibdan o shehelach bahen kedei avodah. Okay, that if they have put the liquid in, okay, and they're tanning or they're stomping on the hides to smooth them down, tahorim, they are considered pure, chutz me'or ha'adam, with the exception of human skin. The kama kadei avuda, asks the Gemara. So how much time then are we talking about in this tanning process? All right, and here, this is supposed to be, again, Ivo instead of Onya. Amar Rabbi Yanai, in the name of Rabbi Yanai, Kadei Hiluch Arba'a Milin, the amount of time that it takes to walk 4 miles. Okay? Now, Amar Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina, Lo Shanu Ela Lefanav. But when we're talking about these examples, let's say to be able to wash before a meal, or to the question of davening, but let's specifically say looking for water to wash for Nitilat Yadayim. That's only when we're talking about the idea that the water could be in front of him. Aval la'acharav, but in order to walk back, afilu mil eino chozer. He doesn't go back even 1 mile. Amar Rav Acha, says Rav Acha, umina, okay, and from this we learn, mil hu da'anu chozer, that we may go back 1 mile, ha'pachot mimil chozer. So in other words, don't go back more than 1 mile, but if the water source was less than 1 mile, one could go back from their journey to go get the water to wash Netilat Yadayim. New Mishnah. Okay. Again, Ketzad mafrishim chala b'tum'ah b'yom tov. How is it possible, says the Mishnah, for us to separate chala, excuse me, when there's a status of tuma on the holiday? Now, the question we could ask is, number 1, are we talking about the challah itself? Are we talking about the person? Okay, let's see what the Gemara, we continue. Rabbi Elazar Omer, he says, Lo tikra la shem ad ta'afeh, that one should not declare a part of that dough as challah until after it's baked. Ben Batera Omer, tatil bitzoneh. Ben Batira says that it takes a different attitude. No, he says, if that's the case, take that challah and just put it in cold water. Therefore, the challah will stay cold and it will not begin to leaven. Amar Rabbi Yoshua, says Rabbi Yoshua the following, okay? Lo zehu chametz shemuzharin alav b'bal yira'eh u'bal yimatzeh. This is not the chametz that we are actually discussing or focusing on, okay, in terms of the issue of the transgression of bal yira'eh bal yimatzeh. Ela mafrishata. But we're talking about the small piece of challah that's been removed. Umanichata ad ha'erev. And then just put it aside until the evening. Ve'im hichmitza, hichmitza. And if then, remember the holiday was only 1 day for them. So if that's the case, by nightfall, it becomes chametz, so it's chametz. Right? So that was a third view. Now, Gemara says as follows. Lema b'tovat hana'ah k'mifligei. Shall we say that their argument here, in other words, primarily the argument between Rabbi Eliezer and Ben Betera. Okay. What is their argument focused on? Okay, it's focused on tovat hana'ah. One translation is the benefit of discretion. Another possible translation is the benefit of gratitude. Okay. The implication is if you're the owner of that dough, you're taking challah, you have a choice to which Kohen you can give that challah. And therefore, by giving it to the Kohen, okay, it's like you're going to ultimately benefit from it because you're going to, maybe the next time he'll do a korban for you, he'll make extra effort, he'll make sure certain things, etc., etc. Maybe that's what they're arguing about. The Rabbi Eliezer Savar, Tovat Hana'ah Mamon, that Rabbi Eliezer holds that this benefit, okay, that you gain is equivalent to financial benefit. Okay. Rabbi Yeshua Savar, Tovat Hana'ah Eina Mamon. But Rabbi Yeshua disagrees and says there is no financial benefit. Okay, it's not equivalent to financial benefit. So the Gemara says, lo, that's no. Tekuli alma savre tovad hana'ah enamo. But everybody holds generally that this benefit of gratitude or discretion, it does not have financial welfare, okay? Financial benefit. So what are they arguing about then? The Gemara wants us to understand. Vahacha b'ho'il k'miflegei. They're arguing on the principle of ho'il, of since, and saying as follows. The Rabbi Eliezer Savar, that Rabbi Eliezer is of the opinion, Amrin and ho'il, that we do say ho'il, namely, ve'i bae itchil Allah. Okay, and if that's the case, okay, then we can always ask to be removed from, ask a shaila about it. Okay, he can ask to have the separation of the dough voided. And therefore, mamonehu, that dough is still his property because he can always ask about it, and therefore it has financial value. Rabbi Yeshua Savar lo omrinan ho'il. And Rabbi Yehoshua is of the opinion, no, we don't hold by since. In other words, since he could ask, right? Okay. And so therefore, itma, it was said about this the following. Ha'ofeh miyom tov l'chol, one who bakes from the holiday to weekday, Rav Chisda amar lokeh. Rav Chisda says that person should get malchus. Rabba amar eino lokeh. Rabba says no, he does not get malchus. Rav Chisda amar lokeh. Rav Chisda says he gets malchus. Lo amrinan ho'il. Why? Because we don't say ho'il since umikla'e le orchim. In other words, his since could be, since it's possible that I could get visitors, therefore it's permissible for me to bake on Yom Tov for Chol HaMoed. Okay? Chazile. That's what he seems to say. Ho'il umiklaile orchim chazile. Rava Amar says, Rava eino lokeh. He does not get malchus. Amrin and ho'il. We say ho'il. Now, Amar le Rava le Rav Chisda. And so Rava then responds to Rav Chisda, Ledidach, according to you, the Amart lo amrin and ho'il, since you say we do not use that conditional possibility of if, since it's possible that guests will come. He'ach ofin miyom tov l'Shabbat. How then is it possible to bake on Yontif for Shabbos? So Rav Chisda answers, Amale, he said to him, Mishum eruve tavshilin. No, he says, because we have something called a mixture of foodstuffs. Okay? That's what the eruv tavshilin is. As we're going to see in a moment, umishum eruve tavshilin, and because of this eruve tavshilin, sharinen isura deoraita, asks Rava, because of this eruv tavshilin, we're going to permit somebody to commit an act forbidden by the Torah. Amarle. So he answers him back, mi deoraita, based on the view of the Torah, tzorchei Shabbat na'asin biyom tov. The necessities for Shabbat may be done on Yom Tov. V'rabanan hu degazru bei gezera shema yomru ofin miyom tov af lechol. And it was the rabbis who made a decree, okay, such that lest one bake on the holiday for weekday. In other words, a stringency. It's one thing to bake from Yom Tov to Shabbos, but they're concerned lest a person even do it also for weekday or Chol HaMoed. So then the Gemara continues, V'kevan de'itzrachuha Rabbanan eruve tivshilin, and since then the rabbis required that there be this eruv tavshilin, this mixture of foodstuffs. In other words, you're mixing the food of one domain, of the weekday, of the Yom Tov domain and the Shabbos domain, okay? As a result, eat le hakera. Therefore, we have a reminder, a symbol that reminds us, okay, some tangible act that we have to do, right, in that case. And remember what happens. The food stuff that you put aside for Eruv Tavshilin on Yom Tov is expected to be eaten on Shabbat, okay? So what happens? Tive. But I'll challenge that, he said. The following. Let's take the following example. Behema hamisukenet. You have a dangerously ill animal, and that animal is supposed to be, does the owner slaughter that animal before the animal dies? And is that acceptable or not? So the text tells us, Lo yishchot, he should not slaughter it, Ela kadei sheyachol le'echol himena kazayit, unless it's possible. In other words, he can't slaughter it on Yom Tov unless it's possible to actually eat at least a zayas from that animal on Yom Tov, right? Sli mi ba'od yom, okay? So to roast it while it's still day, yachol le'echol, he's able to eat it, af al gav de lo ba'ila micha, okay? So his argument is, right, that he could roast it, all right, even if he feels that he's not actually going to be required or necessary to eat it. Now, he says, Bishlema ledidi. That's acceptable according to my view. The amre ho'il. Because we say, since, right? Since I'm going to roast that animal, because who knows, I might get your visitors, right? Ho'il ve'ibai lemechal. How, in other words, since it's possible that it'll be necessary to eat it or to feed it, matze achil mishum yishchot. I can therefore find that out that way to eat it and therefore it's necessary for it to be slaughtered. Elaladidach, but according to your view, the amart lo amrinin ho'il, amai yishchot. But according to your view, where you don't say ho'il, right? How can you say that it would be permissible to slaughter it? Sorry. Amarle, he said to him as follows, Mishum hefseid mamono. So he doesn't have a large financial loss from that animal. And so he challenges it. Umishum hefseid mamono, sharinan isura deoraita. And because of such a large financial loss, you're going to say will permit him to do something that's prohibited by the Torah? Arle. He said to him, and yes, Mishum hefseid mamano, because of a financial loss, Gamar bilibo lechol kazayit. He determined in his heart, in other words, he made up his mind to it, I'm going to say at least eat a kazayas of that animal. Right? V'i efshar lekazayas basar below shchita. And it's impossible to eat a kazayas of that animal unless you slaughter it first, right? Ative, we'll just go over a tiny bit. Ative, but he challenges him again, okay? Lechem apanim. Let's take the example of lechem apanim, he says. That ne'echal l'tisha, la'asara, u'le'echad asar. Okay, the lechem apanim is baked, and then it's exchanged, right, on Shabbos. So say it's baked on Friday, and then the next Shabbos, it's exchanged for the existing lechem apanim. It stays there for a whole week, okay? And then when that lechem apanim is exchanged, then it's available to be eaten. So that means you've got how many days? 9 days, because it's actually baked on Thursday, right? Okay, so ne'achal l'tisha, it could be eaten on 9 days, la'asara 10 days, u'lechad asar 11 days. Lo pachot v'lo yoter, no more, no less. Ketzad, how is that possible? Kedarko l'tisha, in its normal method, it's 9 days. Ne'afa ba'erev Shabbat, it's baked on Erev Shabbos. Nochal b'Shabbat l'tisha, and afterwards it would be eaten on Shabbat 9 days later. Chal Yom Tov liot ba'erev Shabbat, if there's a yontif on Friday, right? What happens? Nochal l'Shabbat la'asara. It's eaten then 10 days later, the showbread. Shnei yamim tovim shel Rosh Hashanah. If Rosh Hashanah is on Thursday and Friday, and it's got to be baked on Wednesday, right? So what happens? Ne'achal l'Shabbat le'echad asar. L'fi she'eino doche v'lo haShabbat, right? L'fi she'eino doche lo et haShabbat v'lo et hayom tov. Okay? Why? Because we don't put it off because of Shabbat or Yom Tov. Okay?
Yeah, right? But this was one of the miracles in the Beis HaMikdash,
right?
That the bread stayed hot for the whole week, and the same. The smoke went up straight, and no flies and everything. How can they use that?
Excellent question. As they say, stay tuned tomorrow. Baruch shekivanta, Erwin. Okay, all right. Picked a good point on which for us to stop, because we'll see if the Gemara raises that issue. All right, guys. All right, everybody, take care and stay well.
Good luck. Good luck, and get you.
Thank you very much.